From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Many Syrians are trying to study overseas while a civil war continues in their country. Thousands of Syrian university students sought help when they learned there was money to help them continue their education. Lynn Ozbek is with JUSOR, an organization for Syrians living overseas. JUSOR joined with the American-based Institute of International Education to create the Syria Consortium for Higher Education in Crisis. More than 40 universities in the United States and Europe agreed to provide emergency aid to Syrian students and professors. Each university decides which students to accept. Universities in the consortium are supporting 70 students right now. One member of the consortium is American University in Washington. It is supporting a Syrian graduate student and a faculty member in the university's School of International Service. Daniela Kais is the vice president of the Institute of International Education. She expressed there will be aid opportunities for 600 Syrian students during the next few months. She notes that a former president of Portugal, Jorge Sampaio, launched a scholarship program called the Global Platform for Syrian Students. He created the program because of Portugal's history of educating Jewish refugee children during World War II. The Institute of International Education also has a Scholar Rescue Fund for university professors and researchers in any country in crisis. This year, the fund found places for 30 Syrian scholars in 5 countries. All of the scholarship programs may be found online at iie.org. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. The United Nations Children's Fund is appealing to international donors to help provide education money for Syrian school children. Safe places to learn, teachers, and supplies are all lacking. And almost 2 million young Syrian students have dropped out of school. UNICEF says about 40% of students from grades 1 to 9 across the nation no longer attend formal classes. UNICEF spokeswoman Marixie Mercado says about half of those children are now refugees in Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Turkey. In the northern city of Aleppo, for example, only 6% of children of school age are in classrooms. But the school year there and in other locations began as planned on September 15th. Talk of a military strike by the United States had caused uncertainty about starting classes. But schools opened after a strike appeared less likely. Still, many children who once walked to school are now taken there by their parents, and other families have simply left the country. Lebanon now is trying to help about 550,000 school-age Syrian refugee children. UNICEF says the Lebanese public education system can take care of 300,000 Lebanese children. UNICEF is establishing schools for refugee children in buses. In Jordan, UNICEF says about two-thirds of 150,000 Syrian school-age children are not in school. In Iraq, UNICEF says 9 out of 10 Syrian refugee children are out of school. Inside Syria, Ms. Mercado says the educational system has been torn apart. Both UNICEF and the Syrian government say about 3,000 schools have been damaged or destroyed. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Recently, there have been increased efforts to make sure children in Africa get a good, strong education. But a new report says governments are losing about $129 billion every year on poor quality education. As a result, about 1 in 4 students in poor countries cannot read a complete sentence. That represents about 175 million young people. The report price comes from UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. It says poor teacher training and spending cuts are just two of the reasons for schools failing. Pauline Rose, an education specialist, directed the report. She says more teachers are needed in African countries south of the Sahara Desert. She says the area needs an additional 225,000 teachers a year to improve primary school education by 2015. Pauline Rose says governments like saving money by using contract teachers. These teachers are not government employees but work by special agreement. Contract teachers can easily be dismissed. In addition, they earn far less money than teachers working for the government. The UNESCO report says governments will need to increase spending on education. Many countries' financial support for education has decreased or stayed the same in recent years. The report praises some countries. It says South Africa provided 6 times more money to teach students in areas with low education levels and high unemployment. And Malawi is creating teacher colleges to train teachers for rural areas. For VOA Learning English, I'm Caroline Prasudi. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. South Africa has 11 official languages. If you want to say hello, it's Sawubona in Zulu and hello in Afrikaans. Now South African school children may start using Ni Hao to say hello. The country's education ministry hopes to add Mandarin language classes in some schools. Mandarin is the official spoken language of China. That country is a major trading power for South Africa. The two countries recently signed an agreement that identifies 5 areas of cooperation. They include curriculum development, mathematics and science, teacher training, and research and development in basic education. South African officials have not said how much the Mandarin language classes will cost. Troy Martens works for the Ministry of Basic Education. She says the new partnership is extremely valuable to both sides. The part of the plan that has gained the most attention is a proposal to offer Mandarin classes in schools. Last year, a public opinion survey showed that South Africans have mixed feelings about China. It found that 46% of South Africans do not like the spread of Chinese ideas and customs in their country, and 60% of South Africans said they dislike Chinese music, movies, and television. But Ms. Martens says trade with China is more important than those feelings. She says it is extremely helpful for South African students to learn about the Mandarin language and Chinese culture. And she said not every school will offer the language training. South African census officials have not said how many native Chinese speakers there are in the country. For VOA Learning English, I am Alice Villarreal. I'm Alice Villarreal with the VOA Special English Health Report. World Suicide Prevention Day was September 10th. This year's observance was meant to bring attention to the differences among suicidal individuals and their situations around the world. But the organizers also said that all over the world, people have something in common. They need to feel connected to others for good mental health. The organizers included the International Association for Suicide Prevention and the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization says that every year about 1 million people kill themselves. It says suicide is one of the top 3 causes of death among people between the ages of 15 and 34. Among people aged 10 to 24, suicide is the second leading cause of death after road accidents. Lenny Berman is president of the International Association for Suicide Prevention. He points out that suicide rates differ from country to country, as do common ways that people kill themselves. As a result, he says, prevention efforts must fit with local needs. He says the main methods of suicide in developing countries have been pesticides, pesticide poisoning, and overdose. And there have been efforts to develop prevention programs to reduce the use and availability of pesticides. Mr. Berman says findings from agricultural areas of Sri Lanka, India, and China show promise. They showed that programs are helping to limit access to this poison. There are often clear warning signs before a suicide attempt. Lenny Berman says individuals usually talk about the idea before they try it. Another warning sign, he says, is a sudden increase in the use of drugs or alcohol. Warning signs also include expressions of hopelessness or a sense of feeling trapped. Mr. Berman says the risk of suicide can be more difficult to identify in children. They generally communicate more with the other than with adults, but the other children often do not understand the messages. As a result, he says, when children speak of suicide, other children rarely report it. For VOA Special English, I'm Alice Villarreal. You can post comments on our website voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find transcripts, MP3s, and transport of our programs. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English.